The following story and events took place in Newcastle, Australia between 1977 and 1983. The Turning Point Band embarked on a remarkable journey of no return, from a garage band to the ultimate pinnacle of rock music stardom. After 25 years, here is their story of trials, tribulations, scandal, successes, and the good times, as recalled and described by the band members and crew. Newcastle, 1978, centre of steelmaking and steel-hard rock and roll. Rock was the driving force, and the mighty city had its fair share of contenders for the stage. Prior to buying a real guitar, Peter Wass commenced his flamboyant music career practicing on a broomstick or on any other wooden utensil he could get his hands on. Peter Thompson experimented banging on various household tins and buckets before embarking on a search for a real drum kit, and the boys pretended and lived out their dreams at every possible party, hoping that one day their ship would come into Newcastle Harbour.
Well, me and Tomo were school buddies, and we had a bit of an interest in music together. We went out and watched bands play. We wanted to be up there on the stage, so basically, I picked up the guitar, started learning. Tomo was a bit of a drummer. Then we decided, well, let's look for a bass player, let's look for another guitarist, maybe a singer, and start practicing and see what happens from there. We were sitting at South's one night and drinking as usual, and we bumped into these two roughnecks, a guy called Ross Craney, another guy called Renee Miles, and just so happened they played guitar each, one rhythm, one bass.
So, in those days, that's what it was about, up souths, drink beer, chase women, get drunk, drive home, which you can't do now, of course, children.
The 70s were a time of love and peace, growing, lots of drugs, sex. That's where the term sex, drugs, rock and roll come from.
As the saying goes, sex, drugs, rock and roll.
The late 70s, what a time. It was good to be alive. We went out, we watched bands, the top bands in Newcastle, and we wanted to be up there like those guys. We had dreams. We were young, and we wanted the chicks. So what more can I say?
Effectively every night you could go and see a live band somewhere in Newcastle and turn up there with crowds of hundreds, up to 1,000 people in some cases. So I think it was a pretty significant time at that stage for music in Newcastle.
Renee Miles had already experimented for some years on rhythm guitar, while Peter Wass was aggravating his mum 6 hours a day practicing lead guitar in his bedroom. Peter Thompson also had the knack to keep beat, while Ross Craney went along for the ride while he learnt bass guitar.
I don't think Renee actually had much interest in music until he started playing, actually.
From drinking, debauchery and jamming at wild crazed parties in the early days, it was quite evident that talents were emerging and that in the formation of a new rock and roll band was imminent. After many nights boozing together as good friends at South Lees Club, the band's main co-founding members, Peter Thompson, Renee Miles, Peter Wass and Ross Craney, decided it was time to join forces and create some music, or what could be described as distorted noise back in those days. As the boys were pondering on a band name, fellow schoolmate and friend Trevor Smith came up with the name Turning Point, and this then became the unanimous choice with all the members. The year was 1978, and in the garage of the Wass residence, the Turning Point sound was being moulded and developed.
Our rehearsal sessions used to consist of 4 hours sitting in Wassie's garage every Saturday afternoon, 4 of us, with 3 cartons of Tooheys Draft, playing April Sun in Cuba over and over and over again.
I certainly don't think we were good. There was no natural musicians, especially when we started, there was no natural musicians there. Everyone just had to put a lot of effort in and learn things.
I'd say the music was quite average while we were practicing, but we sure needed a singer because none of us could sing. I tried, but I couldn't sing.
There was a learning curve, and of course everyone's learning together, so...
We actually progressed on to 2 songs, and we actually learnt the old Safari song, Wipeout, as an instrumental.
Yeah. Pete would always get everything sooner or later, because he was the only one to put the effort into it.
Through a succession of drifting members and losers, the final persona of the band was taking shape.
And of course, in those days, you'd grab any singer you could get almost, because they were so hard to get.
South Cardiff Hall was the venue for the first big Turning Point gig in 1979. Gigs at the local scout halls, schools and loony bin gave the band an injection of enthusiasm to keep going.
Certainly the quality of the music wasn't all that good, but I don't think.
As a guitarist, I was never happy with my sound. I could never get to the stage where I could say that I was a rhythm guitarist because of the sound. It just wasn't right.
I think in the beginning I took it a lot more serious than the rest of the guys. I know we were in it to have a lot of fun, but I think I wanted the band to get there as quick as possible.
Yeah, that was in the days where, a lot of the times you didn't remember just how well you played. Yeah. You used to drink a bit more while playing in those days than later on when it was taken more seriously.
Longtime schoolmate and friend David Jones took on the management of the band as well as front of house audio mixing.
I think the rehearsals were a challenge. The guys rehearsed every Sunday at the local Cardiff South Soccer Club hall, and they were a challenge for the guys. Trying to go from garage band to being a professional band was a big step, and there was plenty of emotions as people were making mistakes and trying to get their head around what they were trying to do.
Old DJ, manager, tour operator, truck driver, mechanic, you name it, he was there. Organised the gigs, organised us, organised accommodation. Without him, I think the wheels would have fallen completely off Turning Point. We would have fallen apart.
He kept his cool when everybody else fell apart, and that was it. And nothing would rattle DJ. DJ is sitting at the mixer. This is DJ at the mixer. That was his move. You see DJ do that, you know, well, somebody's done something wrong.
When DJ heard a mistake or something, you could tell what he was saying under his breath. Here we go again.
For all the times we've been practicing and spending our time at the Cardiff South Hall and all the other little gigs that we've done around the place, the guys are still making mistakes in the exact same places. You've got to shake your head about that.
Well, DJ was a very quiet sort of a bloke. It was very hard to get any information out of him. Even though we knew him fairly well, he was very secretive about his thoughts, wishes and desires in life.
That old Bedford, mate, it's a wonder it got us anywhere, let alone to Huskisson and back. There's a lot of stories you can tell about it, but I'll tell you what, the best one of all, going across the Harbour Bridge, DJ in the passenger seat, Renee driving, pouring rain, all of a sudden no windscreen wipers. DJ being the improviser he was, and we all had DJ was supposed to be the brains of this outfit because we certainly weren't. We thought, oh, he'll come up with a U-boot plan to repair this. But no, what's he do? Next thing, across the Harbour Bridge, DJ's out on the running board, holding the wiper and physically going across the windscreen. I could not believe it. The looks we got from the passers-by on the bridge, my God.
I guess the old truck was all we could afford at the time. Really, it wasn't a high-speed highway truck, that's for sure. It was a very slow round town truck only, and even though we took it to places afar, we probably shouldn't have.
Turning Point also idolised themselves around the #1 Newcastle band at the time, Heroes.
If we could have ended up like Heroes, the greatest band ever come out of Newcastle, that was the ultimate goal, to be Heroes. They were our idols. We never intended to replace them, but that's what we wanted to be. Up there like those guys were.
Yeah, we tried to achieve a stage act similar to Heroes, but I don't think we really got there. Almost, though.
Well, as far as the band aspiring to be like Heroes, band Heroes, Peter was the worst offender. The rest of the band followed suit, but Peter was the worst offender by far.
Guest appearances at venues such as the Bel Air Hotel created a stir within the crowds and caused a sensation throughout the town.
Atlantis down at the Bel Air talked our way into it. Didn't have a singer at that stage, so the only thing we could do was wipe out.
We just went up to Peter and said, look, all the guys are here, we've got this band together, do you mind if we get up and just do one or two songs? Anyway, we convinced him to do that.
So we did wipe out for about 45 minutes. We did wipe out.
But no, it didn't end there. The people kept applauding. They wouldn't leave us alone. And fair dinkum, our guitarist, Wassy, he got there and he just went crazy. He was like the god of rock and roll of the Bel Air. It made that bigger impression, which he was entitled to do, but I think he overdid it. And I'll tell you what, he got ribbed by the members of the public that were there that night, and I'll tell you what, by the rest of the guys in the band for years to come.
Yeah, I think I overdid it during that gig. Look, the girls were there, the crowd was ready to go. I just wanted to make an impression. Wanted to create controversy. Turning point was here, in Newcastle, ready to go. So it backfired a little, but I had to do what I had to do.
Pete Wass, lead guitarist, his growth to rock stardom. I remember when we first started, he was on an ego trip. I think he was, we love you, we love you. Pete Anderson, who was the big booking agent at the time in Atlantis, well, he wasn't very happy. We were virtually thrown off stage. The crowd loved us. We kept going. They kept cheering. We kept going. They kept dancing. We kept going. And then Peter Anderson came and said, well, you get going. Get off.
Peter Anderson just walked up and he could not get us off the stage quick enough. And in fact, he didn't speak to us for months after that gig.
That was a bit of a worry because Tomo had to play his drum kit right-handed instead of left-handed. I think we were all too eager, too soon to get up on stage.
An appearance also at Stewart's and Lloyd's Recreation Club began sparking a glimmer of interest in the eyes of pub and club goers. Fortunately for the crowds, the best was yet to come.
Next thing you know, the guys from No Celebrity jumped on stage with us. They joined in. Everyone was having a great old time. Again, we weren't there to compete with them. We were just sort of helping everyone have fun. In the end, though, after about sort of 20 to 25 minutes of this, the club management came and sort of said, look, get these guys off, we're not paying them.
I think it was probably a bracket we talked our way into, which was cool with them. And there was actually the club management who came in and said, we're not paying these guys, we're paying you guys. No Celebrity, get up. So it was virtually, as the secretary manager or something came up on stage and ushered us all off, told us to go away.
We advertised for one singer and we got several that we tried out. We got a girl called Candy. She thought she was a good singer, may have been good looking. I ended up going out with her for a while, so she must have been all right. But no, she was a wannabe and really didn't last, so we weren't going any places there. Pete Burgess was another one.
Yeah, and Burjo, I think we had them both the singers going. I mean, we were never going to have a female singer anyway, but I think at some stage we needed her and she'd come along.
Well, my memory of Pete Burgess was that one day we had a gig to do and the other guys in the band had to go out and get him out of the surf and get him to the gig to sing.
Well, yeah, we used a few singers up to get the musical section right.
Well, I was rather concerned about finding a good singer for the band because we'd been through so many and so many bad ones and so many unreliable ones that I was thinking the band wasn't good enough to attract anybody that was good enough to occupy the frontman position.
I guess the Tea Gardens pub on New Year's Eve, I guess, was probably one of the biggest shows the band had done at that stage in terms of crowd and things. The place was packed to the hilt, and I can remember early hours of the morning sleeping in the truck to wake up to find them washing glass and blood and things off footpaths.
I guess what's remarkable about that show is that was probably one of our first real gigs out of the garage that had a decent crowd.
Yeah, we did a few school dances and we enjoyed the attention, especially the schoolgirls. Let me tell you, one particular gig, St. Joseph's All-Girls School.
St. Joey's, one of the many school gigs we did. You know what it was like with all the young girls and everything like that. But the best thing I remember about that is we got there and we went up and we went to start the gig and there was an empty room. And we thought, shit, how are we going to play to an empty room? You know, we were looking forward to a big gig. Anyway, we thought we'd better start so we wouldn't get into trouble. So we got there and we got on stage, came out, all guns blazing, hit the first note, and 600 screaming kids just ran into the room, girls down the front throwing themselves at us. And we thought, wow, this is great, isn't it? We just thought, wow, this is what we want. It's just like being on Countdown. Little did we know, as we found out the next day, that the reason that happened is the teachers wouldn't let the students in until we started playing, so our egos were deflated. But that's rock and roll.
We're there behind the curtain. They're all waiting for us to go back on stage. I stuck my guitar out from the curtain and they all went crazy screaming. And I pulled it back in again and it stopped. And I put it back out again and they all started screaming again. I pulled it back in. Wow. Then we went on and it was all crazy. They all went crazy, just like Countdown. If you remember Countdown, it's exactly how it was.
You know, girls saying, play it again, play it again. Well, we love you, Pete, we love you, Pete.
Well, they were a lot of fun. Sounded like you were at a Beatles concert in the 60s.
From the garage to their first lot of low-key shows and guest appearances in 1979, the Turning Point name was already getting around town, partly due to their crazy lead guitarist Peter Wass and his wild antics on stage.
I remember it once at the Newcastle RSL club when it was still there, standing on the speaker stack. The whole lot swaying backwards and forwards. And at that place they used to have the sound level meter on the back wall, and every band that ever played there, they were transfixed. They were watching for the red light to come on, and because it shut all the power off.
Yeah, Newcastle RSL, standing on that speaker stack was a bit of a risky thing to do. I guess I just wanted to impress the girls, and I wanted Turning Point to have a great stage act. Had to do what I had to do.
His signature look was the satin shirts and jacket, very 70s indeed.
Oh yeah, and then them flary pants he used to wear as well. And I'm just taking a stab in the dark here, but I'm pretty sure that he used to wear white volleys with those satin shirts. That was a pretty good thing in the 70s, the satin shirts and the big lapel collars. And he had a good mop of black hair too, that used to flap around a bit, and it looked really good. And Shoney lit it up too. The old flicking of the mullet flick, you know. That was pretty cool.
Rene, and that's what he writes here, Rene in his Leif Garrett impersonation. Not Leif Garrett, Peter Garrett impersonation. Especially playing the guitar. I used to wait for his head to fall off. His head completely out of time to the rest of his body. And the music.
Mark Smith, a country lad from Singleton, impressed the band with his super vocals and humorous stage demeanour.
Mark was always pretty ambitious. He was always very keen, too keen sometimes.
Well, he was a one-key wonder. He did his one key very good, I think.
Well, Smithy was always a good fella to have around. I never would have thought that he was the best singer there ever was, but he had great stage presence and he was able to attract the women, which then attracted the guys and attracted audiences to come and see us.
But yeah, it was good having him in the band, and I think it would have lasted, and he was prepared to go places as we were.
I really enjoyed his singing style. He was a lot of fun. think he took the band to a whole new level at that time.
But he didn't have the flexibility.
Turning Point then took the Singleton Rugby Club by storm. To this end, the group were definitely making their mark, and screaming girls were starting to take notice. Newcastle could only sit in anticipation of the entertainment and musical geniuses which were about to explode onto the rock and roll scene within the next few years. Stories of unruly behaviour and crazy incidents were frequent, and never a dull moment was to be found when Turning Point hit the stage. This type of behaviour was often alcohol-fuelled.
We've got a gig coming up the Hunter Valley, and he's in Newcastle Hospital.
Of course, Friday afternoon, all the doctors had gone home. The nurses wouldn't let me out. So it became a break and exit rather than a break and entry. And
the fact that he had to be basically kidnapped by a lead guitarist from hospital.
Yeah, you snaffled me out of there, whizzed me up to a plaster from ankle to above my knee, whizzed me up to Singleton Friday night. All the gear was set up on the crutches. Well, it did go down in the annals of rock and roll history, being broken out of the hospital by one Peter Wass.
During the band's demanding playing schedule, it was not uncommon for crazy behaviour both on and off the stage. Bass guitarist Ross Craney almost lost his leg during a freak incident at Muswellbrook Workers Club.
Talking to these bunch of blokes at the table next to the stage, and this monkey's flipping his ash down, and of course a bit of ash got under the cotton wool coming out of the bottom of the plaster and started smouldering, and there's smoke coming off my foot. It's on fire. Well, yeah, I couldn't bend down, so anyway, we ended up pouring a schooner of beer over it to put it out.
And Ross, again, without thinking, first thing that came to his mind, picked up his beer, tipped it on the cotton wool to put out the fire. So next thing, all the cotton wool and the plaster on his foot, it's all gone all soggy and soft.
Of course, over the rest of the weekend, the plaster promptly fell apart. And
as they say in the music industry, shit happens. The band's popularity gave them the credentials and opportunity to support Mondo Rock and Cold Chisel in 1980.
So that was one of the big ones. So unfortunately, that's when I had my leg in plaster as well.
Yeah, I recall the Mondo Rock and the Cold Chisel supports. And back in 1980, it was a big exposure for Turning Point. There's 2,000 people in front of you expecting a good show. And we would never dream about getting an audience that size. So it was quite scary.
I think the Mondo Rock concert at Cardiff Workers Club in particular was probably one of the memorable ones where the band had done some support work, to the extent that we had members of the band coming up and actually listening and assisting with the sound on the sound desk. So it was quite an interesting, different event to what we'd done in the past.
Well, once again, it was probably a little bit much too soon, but that was a great experience, and my back's still hurting from lugging those speakers.
Then we got to the end of the first set, and I was sitting on a stool, of course, because I had plaster from hip to ankle. Got to the end of the first set, had a break. Everyone took off to chase girls, buy beers, whatever they wanted to do. And they'd already taken my crutches, because you're not allowed to be on stage with crutches under your arms, of course, because you've got to play guitar. So crutches had already disappeared behind stage somewhere, and they just left me there, sitting there. I don't know, 3,000 people out the front, and I'm sitting on stage. No beer.
The band also had a dream of writing their own songs and the possibility of making it big on the Australian circuit.
Well, I wrote one original, and we were hoping maybe we could slot in some original music in our repertoire, but at that time really originals weren't really the go. So I remember I used to say to the boys, let's write a whole string of originals and hit the Sydney circuit. Great dream, but it never happened.
One in particular, we sort of had a little bit of success. It was good to actually just throw in a song of our own, but we weren't really heading down that direction, because back in those days, at the time we were playing, there was not a lot of popularity for original type bands at that stage, but it was good to, in amongst all the other classics, to have your own song there and say, this is one of ours, we wrote this.
Original songs, I was never into original stuff. It was Newcastle, covers was it.
I know it wasn't an era of writing your own songs at that time, because we know in the industry at that time, if you don't play what people want, you're not going to get paid. You play your own songs, you're not going to make any money.
It was now 1981 and lead singer Mark Smith handed in his notice. It seemed that the effect of travelling long and tiring distances from Singleton, age, passive smoking and booze were taking their toll on his mind and body. This was rather a shock for the band, and it seemed that all their hard work would come to no avail, due to the ever-increasing difficulties at the time in finding other suitable and experienced singers.
I remember at practice one night and Smithy said, it was Smithy that started it all. He said, no, I'm going to give it up, I'm going to leave.
I knew Mark Smith was a good singer, but my fear was that Turning Point would go backwards once he decided to quit.
Not long after the shock departure of Mark Smith, Ross Craney also decided to quit the band. Would this surely mean the end of this young and rising rock group?
But at that stage, and remembering all the problems we had getting singers through our short history up to that stage, I was adamant that we probably wouldn't find a singer, that it would fall apart anyway. So I said, yeah, well, I'm going. I put my hand up, I'm going too, which probably made things worse. Well, actually, because they were getting too successful. It lost its appeal when it came too easy, I think. More enjoyable when it's a bit of difficulty behind it, you know. And every gig's a big win, you know. We got the gig. It's great, but when you're getting the gigs all the time, it's just, well, this is work. Another job.
Yeah, it was a shame to lose old Roscoe, I'm afraid. A bit of a shock. We thought the band wouldn't keep going after that, but yeah, maybe he just couldn't handle the pressure or something, or too much booze, too much smoking. The girls, he didn't have much luck with the girls, maybe. I don't know.
No, I think everybody had a different influence, which was half the problem. The musical influences.
It looked like his days of pop stardom were over, as the effect of age, smokes and booze were taking their toll on his body and mind. After the demise of bass guitarist Ross Craney and the unexpected departure of Mark Smith, the band needed to metamorphosize if it was to survive and move on to new and dizzy heights. The search was now on for the perfect Turning Point frontman vocalist. Enter Frank Terenzini, who stepped into the lead vocal spot and became the band's new frontman. From the deep and dark labyrinths of rock music, Frank Terenzini was the chosen one, the frontman, to steer the band into a new vortex of popularity.
Frank actually saw our ad in the paper, came up to me at Stuart's one night and said, "You're still looking for a singer guitarist?" I said, "Yes."
He was always a good guitarist. I enjoy his guitar playing. He's got a good style.
It was great to get another guitar player with a good sound. Especially his style fitted in really well with Turning Point.
When Frank joined the band, I thought, well, this guy's got a bit of potential. I guess my problem was that he wanted too much money, and that was always a sticking point in my mind. But the fact that he was a lead guitarist opened up a whole new realm of possibilities for the band.
Frank added a whole different thing to Turning Point once Mark had moved on. He came in with a bit of front. He fitted in quite well, I think, with the rest of the guys in terms of playing and wanting to do things. Always seemed to have a girlfriend on his arm there.
Frank Terenzini was unavailable to make comment.
I do recall his lead solos, he wouldn't change the scales at all. He'd just play the same damn lead solo no matter what song. All he would do is change the keys. At times I did find his style a little bit sloppy.
Renee Miles, previously on rhythm guitar, took on the challenges of bass playing in the new lineup. This would revitalise the lineup and inject new enthusiasm into a stagnating but ambitious group. This, they believed, would catapult the group into an entirely new dimension and vortex, thriving on past experience and eager for stardom.
At the time, Frank joined the band and Ross decided to leave. Frank was a better guitarist than I was, so I thought his skills would be better off utilised on the guitar, and I could just adapt to the bass.
Sorry, Rene. I got Rene off rhythm guitar. Mr. Wristlock Rene.
We ended up with the final lineup of Wassy, Frank, myself and Renee, and we were happy with that.
Once formally ordained, the rehearsals were fast and furious, and through all this time, the unmistakable Turning Point sound was being forged and fine-tuned.
So he was good, and like I've said before, he lent a whole new dimension to the band when he came in. Rene shuffled round.
With the new lineup, the sound changed dramatically. It was more punchy, it's more solid.
As a bass player, my sound came together a lot better and fitted in with the band.
I think he was probably relieved that he got the opportunity to go onto bass, because certainly is easier to play, and he ended up eventually doing a very, very good job on bass. Certainly smoothed the way for another good guitarist and singer to come in, because Rene could neither, well, he wasn't a good singer, he would agree. And I think, yeah, he did struggle a bit with the rhythm guitar, and I think that's where Turning Point really started to take off.
It was probably a good move to make.
I think Rene did really well on bass when he took over with the new lineup. He was basically the guy, he put together the sound equipment, he was the brains behind the audio and the technical side of the business and getting the gigs.
Renee was always loved the organising the gigs and the things that went around it, and being part of the rock scene, I think.
And I think he was playing a Gibson bass at that time. It was a wood grain job with a funny Gibson head on the end of it. Yeah, he was just a timekeeper.
Things were then looking up. We didn't get too cocky about our direction where we're going, but it started to look promising, and we sort of just knuckled down and settled in and took it from there.
Turning Point then appeared at top-class venues such as the Matara Hotel and the Bel Air Hotel, knocking the punters dead with their new brand of rock sound.
Yeah, and it really did take off, because the big part that was lacking before that was the rhythm section. People stopped playing rhythm, started playing a bit of lead, and there was nothing left. There was just bass and drums and a bit of lead.
One in particular, the old Newcastle Workers, Parachute Club as we knew it.
Turning Point's performances at Newcastle Workers Club shook the building to its very foundations, which surely contributed to the damage sustained during the 1989 Newcastle earthquake.
We had a really good run at Newcastle Workers Club. That was definitely a jewel in the crown for Turning Point.
It was the right kind of music for the masses. The rock sound echoed and vibrated through the streets of Newcastle like the BHP steel mill. It was also about this time that Shane Austin was acquired to manage the band's lighting show. Shane was an interesting character and well liked by the members. His height and mean looks managed to keep any undesirables from harassing the band and their groupies during breaks between sets.
He was always a quiet achiever, I suppose, in the band. He was always there, reliable. He was good at his job. He's one of these guys that you never had to give instructions. You never had any doubts when you're setting up a show, like, is he going to do this right? Is he going to do that right? He just turned up, he did it. The effect was always there. He was great. Fun bloke to be around, and we certainly miss him now that he's not around.
Shane was a crazy guy with a crazy girlfriend. I became fairly good mates with him because Shane and I did a lot of the road work on our own over time, a lot of travelling together.
Scandal and sensation hit the band when Peter Thompson, Peter Wass and Frank Terenzini all secretly slept with Shane's girlfriend in an unprecedented display of sexual permissiveness that went unnoticed for years, even by Shane himself.
She was part of the crowd that followed us around, and we all got on well with her. She was fine. And we were discussing that, and Frank's turned around and he said, yeah, he said, I remember Joanne. He said, I took her home one night and I spent the night with her that night. And we all looked in at him in amazement. Anyway, next thing, Wassy couldn't control himself, and he turned around and he says, well, a bit shocked, but still he says, well, actually, as a matter of fact, and we've all looked, and he said, yeah, I did the same thing, on a different night. So I thought, gee, this is amazing. And then guilt started to get the better of me. So I sort of put my hand up and said, yeah, okay, guys, I had my turn too, whenever it was and all that. Straight away, all three of us, by this stage, laughing our heads off. We've all looked around at Renee. And straight away, Renee's going, no, not me. I never touched her. He was having a bar of her.
Well, I had no idea that everybody in the band had slept with Joanne. I never really had an interest in Joanne at all. I was more into love and sex rather than just casual sex.
Well, I've got a choice. I've got a personal choice, I like a bit of calibre about my women.
I had no idea at all that three of the four of us actually slept with it at different times. We each did it at different times because of a different situation, and all these years we didn't tell each other about it.
I still can't believe to this very day that none of the guys knew about any of the other guys sleeping with Joanne. I still cannot fathom that.
Shane was probably the only one that didn't know.
I'll have to admit though, she was pretty good.
Frank Terenzini was unavailable to make comment.
Just to show you an example of how Shane didn't know what was going on, after one night I woke up with Joanne. I was at her place, and he just rocks on up to her place, unannounced, opens the door, comes straight into the bedroom. There's me and Joanne in bed. He says, Wazzy, what are you doing here? And I said, I was drunk last night and Joanne just let me stay here. Nothing happened. And he went, are you sure nothing happened? I said, no worries, no, nothing happened, mate. He goes, okay, I believe you. And we're lying there starkers. I mean, what can I say?
I think that's why he jumped off the cliff. Unfortunately, it was a shame to see him have to do himself in and jumping off the bogey hole. Because that shocked a lot of people in the industry, that. And I think a lot of that had to relate back to that Joanne.
A spate of accidents and mishaps almost cost Turning Point their drummer. It was nothing short of a miracle that the band continued to play without losing Peter Thompson through injury.
Our drummer, Tomo, was so accident prone. I remember once we were playing and all of a sudden, I think it was at Newcastle Workers Club, and the song just stopped, mid-song. What's going on? Everyone turns around. Tomo's not there. Fell off the back of the stage.
Oops, there goes our drummer off the back of the riser. Tomo's done it again.
Well, I still reckon to this day that Tomo falling off the riser was a staged act. He might have started to fall off, but he turned it into something that was supposed to look spectacular.
Everything going great. Came to a section of the song, did this big drum roll. Next thing, I just disappeared behind the back curtain. There was no wall behind the curtain because the stage was deep, and my stool had come loose and had actually off the drum riser altogether, which was about 3 to 4 feet high off the ground. I just fell flat on my back. Now you would think that the rest of the guys in the band would be really worried about this and look around. But what did they do? They all looked around, saw I disappeared. Oh, Tomo's missing. Turned back and kept playing. Didn't bat an eyelid. Didn't miss a note.
So we're continuing the song. No drummer. And right at the end, he climbs up on the stage, just in time for the last crash cymbal.
I might have lost a lot of hair since then, but luckily I haven't lost any limbs and I'm still here to tell the tale.
But it is personal actually, because he forever used to whack me with drumsticks on his drum rolls. His drumsticks would be flying out, and of course I'd always find the back of my head. Yeah, he thought that was good fun.
I can't begin to tell you how many times he'd let go of his drumsticks and like past the ear, you know, like, yep, 5 songs later, another stick. He just couldn't hold on to the sticks. And how many times they actually hit me and Frank and Renee in the back of the head.
I guess one of the funny instances that I can remember is when we were playing at Port RSL and I'm standing there playing away, and all of a sudden the drums stopped and I was just about to turn around and have a look, see what happened, and the snare drum went rolling past me and out into the dance floor. That happened on a few occasions. That's what made me fairly sure that he did it on purpose.
For some reason, Shane, in his wisdom, liked to put the smoke machine right under my drumming stool. He thought it would be a good effect with the smoke coming up around me and with the lights and everything. And that was fine until one night I'm sitting there playing away and Shane hits the button on the smoke machine, but instead of smoke I've looked down and there's 3-foot flames this long coming out right underneath me. Now, not to be phased, I still kept playing away, and I'm almost in time with the music. I'm trying to blow this flame out. Again, the guys looked around, didn't bat an eyelid, kept playing. I looked down at DJ, who was behind the mixing desk, and I'm sort of nodding like this, as if to say, look, come up, there's a problem. And DJ, in his usual self, he's just gone, as if to say, yeah, who cares?
All feels good.
Smoke machine. I like to call it a flamethrower.
As they say in the music industry, shit happens. It was about this time that Greg Lunn took over the front of house audio production for the band after DJ decided to retire into oblivion as the effect of age, passive smoking and booze were taking their toll on his body and mind.
I think there was a 2-cent ad in a local paper, from memory. And at that point in time, they were only 2 cents. But I still had to borrow 10 cents to make the phone call. And I wasn't a very good sound guy in them days. I thought I was, but I wasn't. But now I'm a fucking superstar. But I'm still broke.
The sound mixing was always an issue, because I know Renee and me used to disagree heatedly on how it should be mixed. Now, when Lunny came in, I liked his mixing a lot better than Renee, so it was always a step up from the word go. But I think Renee, in the early days, had too big an influence on what he probably, no, this is no good. Until Lunny got control of it and said, well, this is my job, I'm doing this.
Now, I know Renee's jeans had nothing to do with the sound, but he never took the bastards off. I didn't know whether he had legs or not.
Well, I used to call Greg Lunn Mr. Toppy, because his mixes were always toppy. They always had too much highs and no bottoms. And still to this day he does the same thing, but he was a lovely guy and a lovely guy to get along with, and couldn't have asked for a better person to have on the front of house.
As a bit of an unknown at the time, Greg Lunn had the determination and skill to give the band the necessary wall of sound which was required for the type of music turning point we're playing.
Greg Lunn, good sound engineer, a lot of fun, always ready and willing to grab a girl at any gig at the slightest opportunity.
I had to drive the truck.
His fashion sense should have been left at home, but apart from that, no problems. He was a good bloke.
I had to go and pick up the old diner. Was it the diner? Was it the Toyota diner we were driving at the time? I'm pretty sure that was the case. Bloody long walk from my place to his to pick the bastard up, I tell you.
I think Lunny was a good sound operator. I think if it wasn't for him in the band, we wouldn't have half the girls hanging around, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, well, like Lunny was a reasonable looking sort of a bloke. We didn't have any trouble attracting them. I mean, I had a lot of trouble attracting them.
I guess that was just really a progression on the way. Lunny came on the scene really doing more of a full-time roadie type activity. But, I couldn't do all the stuff as we were getting more and more gigs with work commitments and all the rest of it. And then Lunny came in and he was a professional sound guy, so moving along, so I stepped to the side to some degree and picked up a few of the other bits and pieces around the side.
The sound of the band was always good because I'd done the sound.
Good at his job, great fun to be with, good bloke to be around. But please, no more short black shorts and pink leg warmers at gigs.
No football shorts, no football socks. So what do? Walk in football shorts, football socks. Then I'll go throw me out. So you can't throw me out, I've got to make a band name. Frank is a singer. Being an engineer and being as specialist as I am, he had this really bad 1.6 in his voice, which would become really annoying in the monitors and the front of house as well. Yeah, I don't know, Frank knew all his stuff. Frank just was Frank.
Well, my thoughts on Frank was there was a lot of potential there to do things like harmony guitar solos. It only eventuated a couple of times because I think sometimes Frank got a bit carried away in not learning his songs.
Lead singer and guitarist Frank Terenzini declined to make any comment. Gigs throughout the Hunter Valley and the southern New South Wales areas flourished, and the Turning Point sound was contagious. Towns like Gunnedah, Cessnock, Singleton, Muswellbrook and Wollongong were graced by the band's appearances.
Turning Point was unique in its own way. We had our own distinctive sound. Now, I don't know how you would describe it.
There was a rawness about the band. We had a lot of energy. We had a great, lively stage presentation.
The band itself reminded me of a very ordinary Australian crawl.
So, the poor man's status quo or something. It's just hard to think at the time.
Turning Point was your classic rock band. I'd best describe the influences as a cross between the Angels, Aussie Crawl and Status Quo.
Status Quo were a big influence on us, not only in the sound of our music, but even in some of our mannerisms and actions on stage. Nothing like watching Wassy and Frank up there doing choreographed steps to the way that Quo used to. It was good.
From a guitarist point of view, there's nothing like the sound of two Marshall stacks on stage.
The strong guitar-based Turning Point sound was unique among the other thriving and popular Newcastle bands at the time. Hordes of fans packed their venues to come and hear the Turning Point versions of their favourite songs.
We were in the top 10 of Newcastle bands at the time in the mid-80s, even though there was only 6 bands that were any good.
It was soon obvious that sound engineer Greg Lunn and guitarist Peter Wass were partaking in prohibited recreational substances during the course of most shows. This in turn, so they say, enhanced their respective performances both on and off the stage.
Yeah, I got on really well with Greg. He had all the drugs and we got all the girls.
So I don't think drugs didn't play a big issue when I was there. Later on, maybe with Lunny. May take drugs? I don't think so. No, of course we all dabbled and dabbled. Yeah, I think some of the members partook. Was that in natural herbal stuff?
It was also by the influence of Greg that lead guitarist Peter Wass was experimenting with certain social drugs. To this end, it helped Peter play very well while on stage, but comments came soon after that his lead solos were a little out of time with the rest of the band.
Well, yeah, it certainly felt like the drugs were improving my stage performances.
I think in the early days, I think Renee's been known to have a puff or two.
I never got into drugs. I guess I tried them years earlier and they really didn't put much of an interest in my mind, so consequently I left them alone.
The hash was good. I particularly enjoyed taking the hash.
As far as the drug scene goes, there was nothing really. None of the band members, none of us were actually into that. Maybe it dabbled a little bit here and there, but nothing major, never affected the outcome of the band, so it was a very minor issue.
Well, the drugs because they were there, and the sex because why wouldn't you want to have sex with me? The only other drugs were them were the beers and the musical highs. You know.
I'd have to say that Renee would have been the biggest drinker out of all of us, without a shadow of a doubt.
Probably my biggest vice was that having been sent away to the country to work for Telstra, I learned how to drink, and that became a bit of an issue after some of the gigs and probably even during some of the gigs.
Renee always liked to have a drink or two, and quite often I was the chauffeur waking him up as I dropped him back at his place after a gig.
At first, we all had big ideas, and I thought the band was really going places, but I knew we'd have to work at it. We weren't going to become rock stars, superstars overnight, but we had to work at it. As far as popularity, we were no different to any other band. We had certain venues that we played at where we were the greatest thing that ever happened to them, like Huskisson, for example.
Regular touring to the south coast areas of Huskisson and Sussex Inlet came at the pinnacle of the band's career. Huskisson RSL became inundated with patrons following the band's debut appearance in 1981.
Down there, a coastal town down on the south coast, they were used to just bands or groups like the Jarvis Bay Quartet and things like that. We turn up with our flashing light shows, Smoke Machine, Rockstar Image, sort of sex bomb sort of looks, all of that sort of thing.
What was once a sleepy, relaxed place became a packed room of screaming, inebriated fans and groupies. This continued on well into 1982.
One Easter Saturday in particular, the place was packed to the rafters. All the parents are in playing the pokies, are in the restaurant, the young kids are in watching us play. Fights broke out, they ran out of beer, they just had, the place had seen nothing the likes of it. But we were all invited back again, and that became one of our most popular gigs.
My idea was to get away from doing what everybody else did. Everybody else went north. So I thought, well, we'll go south. And to be honest, I think it worked.
That's where we had the Power Rage. That's where we classed it as the Power Rage tour.
Well, I really used to enjoy playing at Huskisson, especially the time when we broke every house record there ever was for the number of people and the most amount of beer consumed in the place.
Berry Hotel became yet another conquest in the Turning Point calendar of wild events. Having attracted a sellout and packed audience, the band once again unleashed their wall of sound onto this small, unsuspecting venue. For those lucky enough to be in the audience, it was an incredible spectre.
Yeah, basically the things I remember about those South Coast runs that I just had plenty of girls hanging off me.
We had one tour that we'd aptly named the Lock Up Your Daughters tour, for reasons I don't need to explain.
Well, we advised them to lock up their daughters, but they didn't. Well, the daughters snuck out because the daughters got a real hiding. I can vouch on that.
Remember those old school days? Or for a few of you, still going to school?
By now, Turning Point stage production and equipment took on mammoth proportions. At Culburra Bowling Club, the size of the band's rig really got the club manager in a huff.
I think we didn't even play there. I think the manager came out, looked at the truck, looked inside, looked at us and went, "See you later, boys, on your bike."
When we opened the truck, he looked in the truck and he said, "What's all that?" We said, "Well, that's our gear." And his words, maybe not exactly, but the effect was, "You're not bringing all that shit in here."
As they say in the music industry, shit happens.
The South Coast runs were pretty wild, especially places like Huskisson and RSL.
I guess one of the funniest moments that I can recollect from the Turning Point days was when we were down at Huskisson and Frank was just finished a gig and we had a gig the next day at the Bel Air. And Frank had told me that he was going to some girl's place to spend the night. And I said, I'm leaving at 7 in the morning. If you're not here, I'm going to go without you. And he said, okay, not a problem. Anyway, 7 o'clock in the morning came, no Frank. So I got myself ready, packed the truck, walked out the front door of the hotel, and here's Frank standing up fast asleep, leaned against the door. And I said to him later on, I said, what happened here? And he said, well, I came home at 2 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't get in. So I had to sleep standing up.
Huskinson, I really vividly remember Huskinson's Berry Sussex Inlet tour, because that was really good. I think after we set up, I think it was Berry was our first trip in, and there was no posters up, no, I think so. My artistic flair come out, found a blackboard, the Power Rage tour, bang, across the front of the building. Power Rage tour. We had a pretty good full house, except after the gig I went, why did the PA sound so weird? That some bastard had pulled the whole left side of the PA out. And I couldn't even hear it from where I was.
That place was packed to the rafters. In fact, they couldn't fit the people in. They were hanging off the roofs, and it was just amazing.
3 gigs, 3 girls.
They seemed to have the most success with the girls, probably because they had the time to do it.
A chick picked me up, went back to her place, and the band had to come and pick me up at Huskinson's, because that's where we went to. That was the next port of call. Picked me up on the way through, got through to Huskinson's, picked up another girlie, and the girlie from Berry came down and I had chaos going on because I had 2 girlies at me at the same time. Never got the threesome I wanted, but there was 3 girlies there.
There weren't many, because Huskisson was the groupie capital of Australia.
Well, I never really had any groupies. I guess I didn't really attract them. But I know there were a lot of others that did, and a lot of things that went on, but once again I sort of stayed clear of all of that.
Lead singer, guitarist Frank Terenzini and lead guitarist Peter Wass were at the centre of attention and sexual scandal as several local Huskisson groupies caught their eye. Nights of partying and revelry normally followed these gigs, and times were good.
They couldn't have been too good because I don't remember them.
I think it was Frank's fault that we hitched up with those groupies from Huskisson, and he liked one of them. I just grabbed the other one, and that was it. Nothing more to be said.
But then we're groupies, you don't put a name to them, because you don't put a name to them, you don't remember them.
I kind of turned a bit of a blind eye to scandalous behaviour within the band. I didn't really get involved in any of that anything scandalous, but I turned a blind eye to the other guys. It's basically, it was their life and, you know, their time away, and, you know, like, as such, I didn't interfere.
In 1982, and a highlight of the busy Turning Point touring schedule was the Royal Hotel at Denman. The crowds from the sleepy Hunter Valley town thronged to see the band display their wares.
We played on the large veranda of this old pub. Quite an experience.
We were outside on the veranda of a pub, and it was so damn hot that poor old Lunny had to get out of the truck with a mixing desk because it was just too hot inside the truck. He couldn't handle the heat. And most of the people were inside in the air-conditioned comfort. I do remember it being so hot that my fingers wouldn't slide up and down the guitar.
The band played to their own collection of groupies and just a few locals, which included the town dog. Denman was never really revisited by the band after this momentous non-event. Jolly Roger nightclub in Newcastle was one of Turning Point's most popular venues. Throngs of women came and threw themselves at the band.
There was a young girlie at the JR who happened to be a friend of my sister's. And guess who scored? And the boys had to pick me up again on the way through. And that became a continual thing on tour. I was always ahead of them. They had to pick me up at a certain address. Never stayed in a motel with them. Always had a different bed and a different hole to use.
The JR really became bit of a home away from home, played there regularly, and the guys used to regularly go there as their watering hole and a place to meet girls.
I remember how we got into the JR. There was a truck strike on and they blockaded the highway, and the JR was ringing, had a Sydney band booked, and they were ringing up all around town trying to find a band that wasn't playing for the night, and we happened to be the one.
The JR, who could forget it? I remember one night we were playing there, New Year's Eve I believe it was, 1982. How could I forget it?
Thank you, Happy New Year! Hope you all had a good time there. Start me up! Up, up.
There was never a night went by at the JR without incident.
And Pete, our lead guitarist, had this huge Marshall stack set up on milk crates, almost touching the ceiling. In fact, it was almost as tall as he is, but that's beside the point.
As part of my normal crazy antics, I decided to do a big jump off the stage. My foot got caught with the guitar lead. I slipped over. My whole Marshall stack went everywhere. You should have seen it. The damn thing kept playing too.
Here's a song by the lead guitarist, where each of you who you were here last week would have seen him demolish his whole amplification system when he tried to jump over it. And though it cost him lots of money, he's back this week anyway with a bigger and better act.
As they say in the music industry, shit happens.
Pete's also almost put his machine head through being as tall as he was in the low scene, put his machine head up through the false ceiling of the JR. In fact, I was there about 3 years ago, just looking through the place, and the indentation of those machine heads is still in the exact spot where he did it on that night. Indelled in that ceiling forever.
My only thoughts on the JR were more along the lines of Victor, and thinking that Frank was a poofter. Victor thought that Frank's stage antics and the way he used to talk to the crowd was along the lines of a gay person. No, that's what he used to say to me.
Frank Terenzini was unavailable to make comment.
So I guess probably the one major event they haven't talked about was Frank's accident at Bulladoola. The days of, we'll go on and drive overnight and do another gig tomorrow.
As they all say in the music industry, shit happens. Tension and friction at band practices between the members began eroding the spark of enthusiasm that once existed in the earlier days. Disagreements on issues of music choice, tightness of the band, finance and how much the lead singer Frank Terenzini should be paid started driving the first lot of nails into the turning point coffin.
Always friction between members. Always friction.
But in the end there, we started to get a bit of disharmony between the members of the band, a few disagreements here and there, different ideas about the way the band should be progressing.
Frank got a bit cocky about his frontman position.
And they used to practice out the back of my place, and they had a big double garage, so they practiced out there. So I'd sit inside, watch a bit of TV, and you'd hear the music stop, and you'd hear the voices start, then the shouting, then the back door would open, and somebody would walk in. Tomo would walk in. Off he'd go, and then he'd settle down after 5 minutes, and he'd go back out, and they'd start up again, and it was repetitive. It was funny from my side.
I remember one of the problems we had with our drummer, Tomo, was that he'd just be playing way too fast, and I recall me and Frank complaining incessantly about how we're getting RSI in our hands, just trying to keep up.
Well, I think there's friction in all bands because you're living in each other's pockets, you're in the trucks all the time, you're living, sleeping, breathing them. Friction's always going to happen. It still happens today.
Friction in the band, there wasn't a lot of friction for quite a number of years. It wasn't until the end when everybody was starting to get the twos with each other about musical ability. But one thing that was of notable interest was one gig at Port Macquarie RSL when the 4 band members and the 4 other halves sat in 4 opposite corners of the room.
I think in the end I had an issue that I thought that the band was paying Frank too much as a lead singer. I didn't think he was pulling his weight, or I didn't think it was worth it. But in the end, we were arguing about these sort of things. So that was not a good way to go.
There's a lot of musical friction, usually between Pete and Renee, or Pete and me, or Pete and Pete. It was always the band and Wazzy, I suppose. He was a hard taskmaster. He should have been a conductor or something. It was usually arguing with Pete.
I was always hard and kept on top of the other members of the band to learn their parts and just get the band tighter. Because, we were competing against the other top Newcastle bands at the time. And, we had to try to stay on top.
I think there was an issue with Tomo and there for a while.
There were concerns from the other members that drummer Peter Thompson was holding back the progress of the band due to what was perceived as bad timekeeping. This ultimately led to a vote on replacing him with a new drummer.
Yeah, maybe there's some underhanded stuff going on beforehand, who knows?
It was around about the time DJ was talking about leaving the partnership, and I wanted to continue. And basically, Peter and Frank came up to me and said, it's either Tomo leaves or we leave. So I had to do a lot of soul searching, and in the end we had to try to find another drummer because no one was happy with Tomo.
I think the general feeling was that the drumming was not up to scratch. All the members felt the same way. We deliberated long and hard about that, and I think in the end we decided to start looking for another drummer.
And that was another issue. I was sick of carrying around a drum key to tune drummers' bloody drums. And I ain't no drummer. But the tuning of the drums, different story.
Probably I feel that the downslide started when everybody started getting the shits with the drumming. And they kept coming to me and saying, we've got to do something. And I guess that's when the mateship started to fall apart.
And in the end, I think due to just a total misunderstanding, I was no longer a member of the band. I don't hold any animosity against the guys, but that's just one of those things that happened, even though it did upset me at the time.
Oh, I think Tomo was probably the one into the band more than anybody else in terms of doing the rock and roll thing. He was keen as mustard and tried really hard to play, and I think probably devastated when it all came to an end.
Well, Tomo was a bit of he was a lovely bloke to have in the band. He'd do anything for you, but I guess my concern was that his musicianship didn't progress with the rest of the guys in the band.
After the shock departure of drummer Peter Thompson, expectations were running high that the band would progress further towards their vision and goal. There were great expectations as the new drummer, Dean Morris, began rehearsing with the band. Almost immediately, the sound and rhythm of Turning Point made a dramatic turnaround. The band was much tighter and the boys were looking forward to great things ahead.
Yeah, well, Dean Morris, I don't know where he came from, I don't know where he went to.
Dean Morris was a bit of an unknown quantity. Whilst he might have been a good drummer and have his technical licks together, put him in the band and he sort of wasn't able to play any more than one beat. Every song was the same.
Generally, all in all, the band sat pretty well together, and we're always looking for new ideas and good avenues, and if it wasn't for me with the smart ideas that come up in showtime, things would not have happened.
Tomo's demise, that's when the dynamics of the band changed, because Tomo, having developed with everybody else right from the word go, got to the stage, and whether the expectations of him were too high, whatever, but he was pushed out. He was edged, and I could sort of picture in my mind, Wazzy and Frank and Renee all there, give the push out through the door. And Dean came in, of course, and he didn't have that history with everybody in the band, going through all the hard times of playing in shit venues for shit money and playing for shit songs and having people boo you. He bypassed all that. He just came in, he was playing with a reasonably successful band. So that's when the dynamics changed. It's like breaking up a team.
The old feeling wasn't there anymore after Tomo got pushed out of the band. Generally speaking, the group was tighter, but we'd lost a mate.
Although Turning Point managed to kick on for a further 4 months with Dean Morris as drummer, it was obvious that the breakdown of mateship between the founding members had taken its toll. The feel was gone, the camaraderie had diminished, and the pressure to perform had sapped the energy and desire from the boys. It was now time to hang up the guitars and move on. Morale was at an all-time low. It wasn't the same as it had been in past years. The demise of Turning Point came in the late stages of 1983 as drummer Dean Morris decided to quit the band due to the friction and unhappiness he could sense around him. And Turning Point now had nowhere else to turn. This had now marked the end of the Turning Point golden era, and their pinnacle in rock and roll music had now dissolved.
Well, I believe the band folded because the mateship was gone.
Yeah, I guess the Tomo's departure from the band was a fairly major thing. I wasn't really aware of what was going on at all until basically Tomo came and saw me at home about what's been going on, and I didn't really know too much, and then it was quite a big change in the overall band, and ultimately ended up being the end of the band, I think.
Richard's pinnacle now. I think there was more left in the band then, at that point. They still had a few more steps to reach that high point of perfection. But it was all good. It was all a good learning curve for everybody, and thoroughly enjoyable.
Shockwave soon travelled through the Turning Point community of friends, family, groupies, and the Newcastle rock scene.
I could say that the band was finished because I left, and I was the greatest drummer in Newcastle, so without me they were stuffed, of course. But seriously though, I think the reason that even though I was replaced and they carried on for a short period after I left, I think the main reason that it didn't work is the four of us, Pete, Frank, Renee and myself, we had that mateship, that closeness. It wasn't just four guys that were in a band that could then go their separate ways. It was that mateship and that friendship that held us together, and we had that harmony. Once that harmony was broken, and it's not just because I left, if any of the four had left, the same thing would have happened, I think. And once you break that harmony, it was gone. And that's reflected in the fact that sort of 10, 15, 20 years later, even to the present day, we've still all remained great mates. We get together regularly, and we've even done a couple of gigs together, and we've had a great time doing it. And that harmony is just there. It's something we will never lose, and I think that's the thing I miss most. Even though I've been in heaps of other bands, it's that bit, that harmony and that closeness in this band, that's what I really miss.
I know after I left and I got the itch and wanted to get back into it again, and I went and tried out with a few bands, but they're not people you've developed with from scratch, and that didn't have the same brotherhood as what all us guys had.
There could have been some great stuff for that band if they'd sort of stuck together.
As a postscript to the Turning Point story, the band did reunite for several concerts. Firstly, the Farmhouse Rock concerts of 1993 and 94, and also the Mayfield Hotel in 1998.
Yeah, we decided to do a few comeback reunion gigs back in 1993, 1994. We just ended up on this farm somehow and did these open-air rock concerts. So that was a real experience and a good comeback for the band.
Well, the farmhouse gigs all came about because of Richard, my next-door neighbour, who wanted us to play at his mate's farm. The worst thing that we ever got from that farmhouse gigs is that most of my road cases that I still own that were used on the farmhouse gig still smell of cow shit.
We did these farmhouse gigs basically to get that old feeling back.
The country air was clean, the cow dung was fresh, and the beers were flowing as Turning Point took to the stage once more.
Rhythm guitar, everybody, please! And to my far left, Mr. Renee Miles on great guitar! And behind me, Mr. Peter Thompson on the drums! And on beat,
One, two, one, two. One, two.
One, two, one, two, one, two,
now where have I heard that before, Frank?
1, 2.
The Raymond Terrace Farmhouse Rock Concert proved an overwhelming success and gave the boys a glimmer of hope in the possibility of getting back together again. The 1994 Farmhouse Rock gig took on tremendous attributes as other well-known Newcastle musicians joined in the fun as part of the show. The crowds poured in as the distinct Turning Point sound moved and echoed across the quiet and sedate countryside of Raymond Terrace. In May of 1998, a further musical resurgence brought the lads back together for a tumultuous rock show at the Mayfield Hotel. The years of experience and hard knocks gave the band a new edge and tighter sound.
This is the only way we're actually going to get a gig 25 years later, so why not? Let's do it, guys. And it was great fun.
There was an air of excitement and anticipation, and there was talk of the band reuniting again to hit the Newcastle circuit.
think the band alone to get back together for one-off events, that's all I can see happening.
I'd like to see the band get back together for just a reunion gig somewhere, or a little reunion run, or even if it's a charity thing, or just a reunion play together and bring the crews back together. I know we can't bring Shane back. That'd be all fun. No, that'd be good. I think I'd really like to see that. I'd be quite interested in participating in that again.
I would like the band to get back together one day. We've tried it on several occasions, but for many different reasons it hasn't happened. We've actually got together 2 or 3 times for gigs like the 1998 Mayfield Hotel show, Farmhouse Rock.
Every time you get together with them, they talk about getting back together. I don't think they'll ever get back together and go out playing at venues, probably until they're all over 65 and they're retired.
Failures. There was lots of failures, but the success was great when I left the band. If I can show you, I can prove to that. Look at this. Professional Music Awards. 1993. Best Sound Engineer. So that was a great success. For me, I don't know about the rest of the band.
Tomo, Mr. 2-Beat. I'm just trying to think of all the drummer jokes now, but they probably all applied to Tomo. But, well, mate, I couldn't play drums. Renee couldn't play drums. Wazzy couldn't play drums. Tomo couldn't play drums, but he made a good drummer. And like I said, it was, as far as other people may disagree, but I was just looking for a good time. Tomo fitted into that good time just perfectly because he didn't take it all too seriously either. It certainly wasn't a good drummer, but then I certainly wasn't a good guitarist, and nor was Renee, and nor was Pete for years and years and years.
Don't I miss plenty of beats playing drums? Haven't you missed the odd chord? Hasn't Renee forgotten what order the bass note's coming out? We've all done it.
But he hasn't changed much. He still can't keep fucking time.
Yeah, but Pete gave us a lot of laughs, as did everybody else in the band actually. Tomo with the flying drumsticks and Renee with the wrist lock, and I don't know what they'll say about me, but I probably contributed to the myth as well.
Toss has always been good value. I think when things got heated up during practice, if it wasn't for his calm, collected manner and easygoing approach, I don't think we would have got through anything.
Was he Mr. Rock and Roll Superstar? We love yous, we love yous. He matured, he came good. Certainly probably developed into the most natural musician out of the whole lot. And I certainly remember when we decided we needed someone to sing and play lead, as well as cover the rhythm. And Wazzy was the only one that would take it on, so certainly his singing got very good, his lead got very good, and his rock and roll superstardom plateaued when he got mature, so it was good.
Big fingers, big feet, big heart, big sound.
Something you ought to know about the latest model.
Well, Mr. Wass, came from nowhere, playing the broom in the backyard at the parties to become quite a proficient guitarist over amount of time, and I know Peter for a long time, back to going to high school, and someone who was probably a fairly shy guy, to be up standing in front was a big effort, and all to him for that.
I was personally very pleased with the level of success that the band had reached, and I think that it would live on as a major chapter in all of our lives.
Probably my biggest disappointment was the band didn't stay together for longer and didn't progress musically as a whole. We were all mates, and it could have worked.
That's it, and that's the thing. We were mates before we were band members together, and that's the thing that's helped us get through this whole thing. If we were just 4 guys, band members, and when we split up, went our separate ways, we still wouldn't be mates with one another. We wouldn't see one another these days. We'd be off in 4 different directions doing our own thing.
Well, since the days of Turning Point, I've been in a few bands, some of them quite good bands, but one thing that's been missing out of every band since Turning Point was the mateship that we had.
I think Turning Point was probably the success was due to the fact they were in the right place at the right time.
I think Turning Point as a band that basically came straight out of the garage made a reasonable sort of impact on the scene at the time. Made them compete to a degree with some of the bands that had been around and musicians that had been around quite a long time. It never had the impact of probably the Heroes and all the others that were there, but by the same token it was a bunch of guys who did it as a part-time job straight out as their first band, so it was quite successful from that perspective.
Most memorable moments was getting the gigs, I think, because when we got the gigs we got paid.
I think we achieved not so much fame, we achieved notoriety, we achieved publicity, fame to a certain extent, certainly not fortune, there was no money in it, but we were there for a good time rather than money.
To this day I'm amazed at how popular the band was. For a bunch of guys that sort of got together and I suppose in the early days didn't have a lot of musical talent, it went a long way.
Yeah, I think the band reached its highest aspirations and got as far as it could possibly go.
So I don't know what it is. I don't know what the success came from, or the limited success, or the runaway success, whatever you want to call it. I think it was because no one took it too seriously, and they just had a good time, enjoyed themselves.
I think the Newcastle rock scene influenced them. And I wish the younger bands today would have taken more note of what happened from their peers, because today's bands have just got fucking no idea. TV and media has totally destroyed them. When we were around in the 80s, with especially bands like Turning Point, constant crowd pullers, crowd pleasers, and didn't the girls love them?
I've got to say that I don't think the band ever reached the heights that it was capable of, but it never ceases to amaze me the amount of success that the band got. We were in all the venues up and down the coast where all the big bands were playing. I suppose in some ways we could say we paved the way for others.
Yeah, it was sad for me when the band broke up. We had a true camaraderie, I think, and more than that, we had a lot of fun, and that's the main thing. It was all about having fun.
We had high aspirations, we tried our best, and we ended up going a lot further than we ever expected we would when we first started, so I think that was a good result that came out of it. We achieved something that we never thought years earlier was achievable with our inexperience.
Although we did have some fun. Had some great fun.
We were there to have fun. Rock and roll music should be fun. It should be one big party, and basically, for as long as it lasted, that's what we had. Party time, rock on.
So I don't think we had any really bad moments, because we were all in it to have fun, and we made sure we had fun, regardless.
As the saying goes, sex, drugs, rock and roll.
And so it is in this game. The blood, sweat and tears, the many hours of rehearsal, the pressure to stay on top, the good times and the bad times, with the memory of Turning Point being the only guiding force as they move forward.